over the past year, the three reasons that I look at now that really make me regret my vote for him are what we're seeing with immigration and ICE, in Minneapolis in particular, um, what we're seeing with his commitment, or his rhetoric around, once again, stealing the election. And really, it's moved beyond rhetoric now, right? They've confiscated the ballots in Georgia, and there's constant talk of running for a third term and influencing or interfering with the midterms. And the third reason would be Epstein, which is, like, unfortunately not just a Republican or Trump problem. That pretty well indicts the entire billionaire elite class of the whole world, really, not even just the United States. So, going into the first issue, when it comes to ICE, and this is one that I also reflect on a lot, because immigration was never one of my motivating factors for voting for him in 2024 or in 2020. And that's another thing I've had to kind of come to terms with, or just kind of accept, right, is you have to be cognizant of what the overall reason is and motivating factor for people voting for a candidate. And people talk about being one-issue voters, things like that, and I guess I kind of fell into that trap. And that's something you have to be careful of, right? Because even though immigration wasn't my motivating factor, it obviously was probably the largest influence in getting Trump elected. And so even though personally it may not have risen to the top of my issues, you have to understand and respect why that's happening, and consider that in your kind of equation of whether or not you're going to vote for a candidate. So my thoughts on just immigration and ICE, and number one, I mean, when it comes to immigration writ large across the West, right? Because the biggest issues we're seeing are immigrants from the Middle East moving into Europe, immigrants from South and Central America moving into the US, Africa as well, having people move into Europe and the US, and also Canada and Australia. I mean, we have no one to blame but ourselves for this problem, right? And immigration is like the biggest issue happening in the world right now. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but a major reason for it is that we invaded and destabilized all these places over the past 80 years, really, right? So we now know, I mean, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's fact that we've pretty much overthrown democratically elected leaders in every South American country, right? In every Central American country. And obviously we've had endless wars in the Middle East that has completely destabilized that region, and North Africa. So it seems like the cause of that is squarely on our shoulders in the West, and we have to take responsibility for that. The chickens are coming home to roost, so to speak, right? Now, when it comes to, so that's my kind of view on immigration in general, right? And my solution for it would be that the obvious but hard solution is make those countries better and more stable so people do not feel the need to immigrate, right? And that still preserves the interesting cultural, regional dynamics of the world that makes connecting and traveling interesting. When it comes to, that's kind of my broad view on immigration. When it comes to my specific views on ICE and their tactics and how it's been used, I mean, it's brutal, right? And let's not even talk about the violence for a second before we get to that. Just the masks alone are completely and totally unacceptable. So when you become a law enforcement officer or a member of the military or any armed force that is, anointed legitimate by the state, that comes with more power than the average citizen possesses. And the trade-off for that, the social contract, is that if we're granting you this additional power that the average citizen does not hold, you must give us full transparency and accountability into your actions at all times, right? And the mask completely and utterly defeats that in every way. It's unacceptable. Hiding your face, right? And I understand their argument that, oh, well, people are doxing them and things like that. But you know what? No one put a gun to your head and said you had to join ICE. It was a voluntary decision. And if you can't handle it, then find another profession. It's pretty simple. That's not an excuse whatsoever. The masks break that social contract that when we give you increased power, you give us increased scrutiny over what you do. That's what you owe us. And we see it again and again with the BS internal investigations that get done and things like that. And this is a bigger story than just ICE. It goes into policing and military in general. But that's kind of my thoughts on just the masks. You know, that alone is an egregious breach of trust of the citizenry. And then we get into the Second Amendment aspect of this, right? Which is just coming from somebody who's raised in a conservative Republican household, that the Second Amendment was a major motivating factor in our reasons for being conservative. And now you see the murder of Alex Preddy, the execution of Alex Preddy in the streets of Minneapolis. I mean, without a doubt, that is the most egregious violation of Second Amendment rights ever caught on video in the history of this country, bar none. And every single right-wing media influencer, to a person, and even gun organizations that are supposed to be centered around protecting the Second Amendment, has basically universally defended that with the explanation of FAFO, right? Like, that's their whole ethical, moral, and political worldview. Anytime someone gets murdered by police as well, FAFO, you know? It's genuinely crazy and doesn't have a shred of thought or depth to it. It's so vapid and empty of a response to something that's supposed to be one of the absolute foundational pillars to conservatism and the Republican Party in this country, is the Second Amendment. And not just the Second Amendment interpreted in terms of, oh, you need to own guns to protect yourself in case a burglar comes into your home. No. Republicans have always had rhetoric around defending the most maximalist interpretation of the Second Amendment, which is that we need guns to stop a tyrannical government. And then when the tyrannical government comes, as it did, they have full-throatedly defended it at every turn over the past 2 weeks, which is absolutely insane. Watch the video. I won't get into it. There's plenty of other places you can watch the video. I'm not going to show it here, but the best video of it is on Drop Site News. I'm sure it's other places as well, but on their X account, from the lady in the pink jacket, you get to see the entire thing beginning to end. I don't care about the other videos that came out of him kicking the car or whatever. Like, that's not any more justification for what happened than if that hadn't happened. Well, let's go through it, I guess, kind of in chronological order as I can remember it. So he gets approached by an officer after trying to grab a lady after she's fallen on the ground. He makes the slightest of contact with his hands like this of that officer, just barely nudging him and maybe you could say stepping in his way. But by no means aggressive, by no means forceful, by no means impeding, by no means resisting, just the slightest of gestures like this. That's first contact, and from that moment on, he's pepper sprayed in the face, thrown on the ground, beaten with a canister on his head by 6 dudes, and the guy in the gray jacket comes into the scrum from behind while Preddy is crouched over on the ground, grabs Preddy's gun, and then the first shot that is fired is from the agent in the black beanie, who is also standing behind and had a 100% clear view of the officer in gray grabbing the gun from Preddy's back holster. So he saw that gun was pulled and removed, and then he fired the first shot into Preddy's back. The whole narrative of a misfire by the agent in gray while holding Preddy's gun is BS. That's not what happened. You can look it up the video. The first shot was by the agent in the black beanie into Preddy's back. And then, 6, 7, 10 shots follow after that between that agent and another one, with several seconds of pausing in between the first volley and second volley. Completely and utterly indefensible in every way. And both of those agents should be in prison and never ever around law enforcement ever again. So that's honestly like something, if you're in a similar position as me, right? Somebody who was born in a conservative paradigm, raised in a traditional conservative kind of household, held the Second Amendment highly, along with the rest of the Constitution. That's the thing, really, that incident, I mean, it's a violation of like the entire Bill of Rights, almost. I mean, you should be completely and utterly disgusted by that and horrified by the defense of it by every single right-wing influencer, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Steven Crowder, Officer Tatum dude, the quartering. I mean, I can't even name all of them, but you know, if you're on YouTube and watch that, you know that every single one of them just has defended it. And the NRA put out a tepid statement similar to what they did with Philando Castile, and ultimately never really took a stance. If you remember Philando Castile, which also happened in Minneapolis, not far away at all from where Alex Preddy happened 10 years ago. Probably the second worst, second most egregious Second Amendment violation that's ever happened in this country. Unfortunately, only the aftermath of that was caught on video, not the actual full incident. With Preddy, we had the full incident caught. So those are kind of my thoughts in conclusion on my first topic of how egregious immigration and ICE has been in general, and especially how you should be very pissed off about it as a conservative.